Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning back in to Skookum Sawmilling. And I know this is a far cry from sawmilling, but eventually we're going to get there. This is all part of it. We'll get to doing some actual sawmilling once I get this backhoe back together. This has got to be my priority right now. So I got to get it done before the snow flies so I can plow my driveway and do some other things with it. I've got some logs to move around that I like to use it for. So we got to get this thing up and running. So it's been a long process, but we're getting closer now. We're starting to go together. I can see light at the end of the tunnel here. So today, our project will be to start filling up that block with components. Last video you saw I put the cylinder sleeves in. That all went great, and now we're ready to start filling the bottom end of this motor. So you can see I've got the block laid out there. I've got the all the other components here over my shoulder. Crankshaft, camshaft, pistons, rods. There's a cylinder head that we completed in a couple of videos ago. So we're gonna start working on this thing, start to fill this up. I'll bring you back. We're gonna talk about the sequence that it would go together. I originally was planning, well, I'll get into that in just a second here. Okay, as I said, I mean, here's all of our components. Pistons are all lined up here. Let me move some things out of the way. Pistons are all set to go. Rods are in them. Everything's good. We had to remember I had to replace one rod. I believe it was this one, because when I lost the rod bearing in this original motor, it really it rounded the edges of that rod over, and I just knew it wouldn't hold a bearing properly. And so I got a rod and put it in there, and everything seems fine, so we'll be good. Got a ring compressor over here to compress those rings, slide them down into the cylinder when that time comes. Here's all of our main bearings, our rod bearings. This is the original oil pump, and it just seems to have a little too much play. It seems to have a little too much play for me. So I went ahead and ordered a new one. Now they come in looking a little bit different, but I guess it functions the same. Let me see if I can get the orientation right. But anyway, this one's nice and tight. So we're going to go with that, and I think we'll be happy with that. Here's our crankshaft. The old crankshaft had previously been turned, at least I think 10 thousandths under, and when it hammered out that number one rod, it just was too far gone. I just didn't want to have it turned again, because I don't even know how far I would have had to go, and I hear horror stories about these things breaking under load once they've been turned, and so I just decided to get a new one. So let me tell you quickly the story about that. So the original crankshaft, let me see if I can show you here on my old parts table, was a smooth bore. See that? Nice and smooth. It's got a bushing in it. No big deal. So when I go to order one, there's a listing for smooth bore crank or splined crankshaft. So I ordered the smooth bore crankshaft, and I wait, and it comes in, and I open the box, and guess what? It's splined. I call them up, say, hey, this thing's supposed to be smooth bore. It's the right part number, but it's splined. Oh, we're sorry. We'll ship you out the correct one. 2 weeks go by, I get the new one. I got to ship them the wrong one back first. Then they'll ship me the correct one. So it's a 2-week process every time. So it comes back, and I'm all excited. I open it up, splined again. Call them up. I said, come on, you guys, this is crazy. Oh, we don't know what's going on. So they do some checking. They finally get back to me. No, we just don't have one. We don't know when we're going to have one. We just don't know. I said, okay, just give me my money back. I'll go shopping somewhere else. I look on another well-known supplier's website. Sure enough, there's a smooth bore. I call them up. I said, now I need smooth bore, not splined. Yep, that's the one. There it is right on the page. And here's the part number, and we've got it in stock. Ship it out. Sure enough, open the box, splined again. The box even says, the crankshaft even says, right here, the label, crankshaft, new, non-splined. it was splined, and I'll slip a picture in here of it. So I call them up again. Hey, this is a different company now at this point, and I call them up and say, hey, this thing's splined. This isn't doing me any good. Oh, no, we think you can use it even though it's splined. Well, there is no way in hell that you can use that splined crankshaft with a smooth bore input shaft from the transmission. For one thing, it was the diameter was way too big, and so there was just no way. So they said, no, looks like we have a bushing that you can use it. I said, a bushing? Well, is this bushing splined on the outside so it will slide in there and then have a smooth bore? Well, we don't know. We're just going to ship it to you. So they ship it to me. It's just a plain old pilot bushing. It was nothing. So it just didn't work at all. So at this point, I'm just done with them. I go to a local machine shop and say, hey, here's what I'm dealing with. And they just chucked it up in their lathe and bored those splines out. And then they made a new bushing. So I ended up with the right inside diameter here so that the input shaft from the transmission will fit in there. And they just took those splines out, made a bushing that would press fit in there. And I believe I'm good to go. I think it cost me an extra $100, but it also took an extra, I don't know, almost a month probably. The guy told me he'd get it done right away, and then I kept checking. I'd go in week after week, and it hadn't even moved from the spot on the floor. Not a big priority job for him, I guess. But anyway, he got it, and so here we are. So yeah, so all told, I don't even know what I'm in this crankshaft. Over $800, I think, because I think I paid $7 something for the shaft itself. So, and then to have an extra $100 worth of work done to it, but I think we're good to go anyway. So yeah, so that will be going, of course, in the block here. And originally, or last time I worked on this, I thought that would be my next step. I'd go ahead and put the main bearings in. I'd set the crank down in there. We'd start torquing things down. We'd check clearances. I've got plastic gauge. We've got to check some bearing clearances and what have you. Then I realized, and I don't know if I can show it very well, but the front main bearing cap also holds the oil pump. Okay, so the oil pump sits on top of the main bearing cap. You can see it right there, and the bolts torque everything down. Now that's fine, except you have to have the right clearance between this drive gear and the cam gear. And the way that clearance is set is with these bushings, or these shims that go between the oil pump and the main bearing cap. That shims that thing back and forth. I don't have the gear here, but the cam gear runs right here and meshes with this. So I got to have the right clearance in those. And you adjust that by adding or taking away shims here. Now I have no shims. These are the ones that were in it when I took it apart. I'm praying that my clearance will be okay. Otherwise, I guess I'll have to make some shims to adjust it properly. So that means, as far as I can tell, that the first thing that has to happen is I've got to put the camshaft in. And not a problem. I have a new camshaft here. I went ahead and decided to replace that too. So I got a brand new camshaft. Now these are a different design. The original camshaft did not have this gear. Okay. Evidently they've kind of consolidated parts, and now just about every supplier that I checked with, the replacement cam for a 188 diesel comes with this drive gear on here. I can't remember what that drives on some of the motors, but it doesn't do anything in mine. I didn't like it, but I just don't see where I have any choice. So I'm going to go ahead and go with it. So we'll put some lube on there. We'll slide that thing into place. Then we've got to put the cam gear on so that we can check the clearance between it and this oil pump drive and make sure we've got the right clearance here. So that's where we'll be when I come back here. I'm gonna get all set up and get you on a stand, and we'll see about getting this camshaft installed there and go from there. Okay. All right, so what we're gonna do here, I just don't, my film equipment, not very good, just an iPhone and an old camera stand, old camera tripod. So this is gonna be tough for me to show you. You can see the cam bearing journals down there, and everything's fine. You can't see the back one, it's pretty shaded, but I'm just gonna put some engine assembly lube on all of those bearings. Then I'll slide that camshaft in and make sure we don't have any spots, make sure it rotates freely, make sure I don't have any spots that give me any concern, and then we'll work on getting the cam gear on it. So let's see, I'll just I don't know how I can do this and show you. I probably can't. Let's see. Okay, just putting a little lube in here, just a touch. Just enough to make sure there's some lubrication the first time things start to turn over in here, so we don't score anything. And make sure that everything turns freely. No binding because of any dryness or anything. So we'll see here how this goes. Go. Now maybe I'll go ahead and put a little on each of these cam lobes, cam journals, I should say, instead. Okay, getting these lifters put in. Nothing to them really. They're really just followers. They're not really lifters. They're not hydraulic. They're just they just rest on the lobe of the cam and push the push rod up and down. They all seem to be in pretty good shape. So all I'm doing is squirting a little engine assembly lube on there, little on the shaft so we get some in the bore that they ride up and down in, and then just setting them down into the block in those holes right there, and there. I already have all the rest of them in. Can't really see down in here. But yeah, so I'm just dropping those in, and then we'll be able to slide that camshaft in. Okay, all the cam followers are down in here. There they are, all laid in there nicely. Cam bearings are good, they're lubed up. Yeah, I think we're ready to slide that camshaft in there. So let's see what we can do about that. All right. Here we've got it ready to go. I just got some lube on each journal, just kind of smear it around a little bit. I've already lubed up the bearings as well, so just put some on here. Probably should put a little, now that I think about it, on each lobe as well. So we'll put some on there and work that around a little bit so that when we turn this over, there'll be some lubrication. I lubed the heads of those lifters or those followers as well, so we should be fine, but never hurts to put a little extra on here. So, okay, here we go. I think we're ready to put this cam in here. So try to do this one-handed here without damaging anything. It's kind of a balancing act, or not really a balancing act, but you got to line it up to slip it through each one, and in between each one it kind of is unsupported, so you have to kind of guide it carefully so that you don't damage anything, specifically the bearings. Okay, so we're good. We got 2 to go here. Kind of ease it in there. Hard to do one-handed, but that's what I'm trying to do. I may not be able to do it one-handed, however. Oh, there we go. One to go. So let's see if I can lift it from down in here, guide it in. Almost there. Not really hard to see, but oh, there we go. And the cam is in. Turns good. I don't feel any binding at any position. So I think we're okay there. So let's take a look at the flashlight. Some light, my high-tech lighting system. Yeah, there's our cam lobes lined up with the followers. So we're done. There's that gear. Like I say, it doesn't run anything on this engine. I don't know what it ran on the others. I don't know. So anyway, that's in there. So now I'll get the cam gear cleaned up and we'll look at getting that put on here. Okay, well, sometimes you just got to fess up when you've screwed up. Now, I haven't made any fatal errors here, but I did get things out of sequence. I've been talking about putting that main bearing cap in with the oil pump, and you have to shim the gear for the oil pump to match. And in my mind, it was supposed to run up against the camshaft gear, but it doesn't. It runs off the crankshaft gear. So I just went to all the trouble to put, let me see if I can show you, to put the cam and the lifters and everything in there and put this cam gear on and all of that, only to finally realize I didn't have to do any of that at this point. I would have had to sooner or later anyway. Doesn't hurt to have it in there right now, but no, I've just got to set the crankshaft in because I'll show you here. Because this is the main bearing cap for the number 1 journal, I guess you'd call it. Sits down on there. It looks like any other, but this one also supports the oil pump. Okay, this is the oil pump. You can see the bolts. You can see the shims here. And this goes right down on there. Okay. And in my mind, I was thinking that this meshed with the cam gear, but it does not. It meshes with the crankshaft gear that will be positioned right in here. And this is the distance. This is the valve or the lash that I have to adjust. And you adjust that. So my next step will be to put the crankshaft in and put this gear on the end of the crankshaft. And then I will be adjusting with shims like these. Hopefully these are all it's going to take. And you adjust it up or down to get the distance between the lash between that gear and this gear properly, so they don't run too tight and wipe each other out, or too loose and strip teeth off. Now this one obviously also meshes with the cam gear at the same time. But this is what I adjust with those shims. So I spent about 2 hours worth of time messing with this camshaft and the lifters and getting this cam gear pressed on there and torquing the lock nut and everything down, all for naught at this point. Sooner or later I would have had to do it anyway, so not a big deal. So we'll get reset up here and we'll start thinking about laying that crankshaft in there. All right, moving on. Time to lay that crankshaft in here. I'm pretty excited about this actually. So first thing I'm gonna do is just using a lint-free cloth, just kind of wipe things down, make sure I don't have any grit or anything in here. It looks good, nice and clean. Okay. And we'll start with these main bearings. Okay. So the main bearings are just a shell. Many of you may have done this many times and know this, but they're just a shell that goes down into the, that sits down in these spots. They have a little tang right there that corresponds with a little notch in the block and on the caps. So you just put that one in there, making sure that your oil holes line up, making sure that it snaps in there good and solid. The next one, same thing, making sure that you're getting the uppers and the lowers correct, because on some of them there is a difference. I think on these narrow ones there is not. I think that they would, the upper and lower are the same. This is what's called the thrust bearing. It has these side flanges on it. Let me see if you can see this. It's got these side flanges. That is what controls how far the crankshaft can move back and forth, which they call thrust, I guess. And it has to be limited. So there's a tolerance for that. So it looks like these bearings upper and lower are the same as well. So that one goes in here. So this center bearing, in many engines, in my automotive history, most rear bearings were the thrust bearing, but I have a pretty limited exposure, primarily Chevrolet engines, small block Chevrolets specifically, as I used to build a lot of them for racing and what have you. Okay, so there's that one. Now we move on to the next one, making sure, once again, that all of these oil holes line up and that everything fits in there nice and properly. And then the forward one looks like, now this one can be critical. No, I guess they're the same. Okay, so we get that put in there. Once again, making sure oil holes line up. Try to get them down in there flush. Okay, so that is what the crankshaft rests on. At this point, it would probably be time to go ahead and set that crank in there. I think I need to decide whether to try to put that crankshaft gear on the end of the crankshaft now, or once it's in there and secure. I'm not sure. Get these out of the way. Let's just, for grins, set the crankshaft down in there just gently and see what it looks like. All right, so for those of you that don't know, crankshafts are heavy. This one weighs about 78 pounds, I think its shipping weight was. I don't know, I had it shipped 3 times. So there you go. Sits down in there just like that. Everything looks good. Got a little bit of, I'll have to check what that thrust, that end play is supposed to be. I think I will hold off on the timing gear right now, at least until I get done plastic gauging everything. So, yeah, there's the crankshaft laid in there. Next step is to, got a product called Plastic Gauge, which is it's a clay material, I believe. And what it is, it's very fine. And it's, let's see, that piece isn't even in there. So, okay. So I must have dropped that one or used it up, I guess. Anyway, and it's a very fine, precision pressed bit of clay. I don't know if you can see that or not. I hope so. And it's and you lay it across the journal. Okay, this is a rod journal, but anyway, you lay it across there. You put your cap on, you torque it down, and it squishes that out. and it's a measured squish. And when you pull the cap back off, then you compare it to these widths on the wrapper, and they go anywhere from 1/1000th of an inch to 3/1000ths of an inch. And that tells you how much gap there is between your surface and your bearing surface. And that is where your oil pressure develops, and make sure you have proper lubrication. In our case on this, it is, trying to find it quickly here, and of course when you're trying to find something quickly, that's when you don't find it. I believe it's 1 to 3/1000ths. Oh no, it's 1.2 thousandths, or 0.0012 to 0.0042. So up to 4/1000ths of clearance. Ideally will be probably about 3, we hope. And that would be perfect. So that will be the next step. So hang on, we'll be back. All right. So back to bearing installation here. So we take these bearings, and just like in the bottom ones, we make sure and put them in appropriately here. So there's a tang. I don't know if you can see that. There's a tang in there. You line that up. Slip that in, it locks in, the oil hole lines up. You make sure everything lines up in here. And let's see. Yeah. And then that bearing half just sits down in there like that. Okay. So I think I guess we'll just do these one at a time here. So let's hang on. I'll get this all set up for some plastic gauge and the torque wrench, and we'll try one. All right, here we go. So I don't know if you can even see that plastic gauge, so thin, but we'll break off a piece of it here. We'll lay it across the bearing journal. We'll turn it a little bit here so we don't have an oil hole interfering. You lay it straight across the journal on the crankshaft. Then you set the bearing cap down on. I'm going to do this dry. And set it down on there and get it seated. There we go. Start the cap bolts. Get them down close. Make sure it's seated in there. We don't want to turn the crankshaft at this point so it doesn't distort that plastic gauge. All we want to do here is just torque these down. The torque setting for these is 90 pounds. So we'll just gently try to evenly run it up here a little bit. I have the torque wrench set for 90 pounds already, but I'm just gently pulling these up rather than just crank on one and go. So we're getting close. All right, here we go. This should be the last pull to get it to torque. Nope. Ooh. There's 90. And there's 90. All right. Now we'll reverse it out of there. And we'll see what we got. I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't work so well. You got to do it a couple of times till you get a reading, but typically it works pretty well. Those bearings actually kind of crush a little bit. All right. So there it is. You can't really see it on the cap. It's on the journal. Let's see if I can get you in here closer to see that. Lower don't know if you can see it. It's pretty faint, but in any case, it crushed, and it looks like we are right at 3 thousandths. So I like it. Remember, our tolerance is, this is not a proper decimal, but 1.2 thousandths to 4.2 thousandths. So basically 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 thousandths. So 3 is a nice number. I like it. It looks like it's good, clear across the journal. Everything looks fine. So I think we're good there on that one. So we'll move on to the next one. Got to check each one and individually. So we'll keep checking them here and see what we get. All right, all the main bearing caps, I installed them all with plastic gauge, torqued them down, and pulled them back off. And I'm very pleased with the results. So this is the scale for this plastic gauge. You can see the really wide mark on the right over here is 1 thousandth up to 3 thousandths. And these are all coming in right at the 3 thousandths mark. And remember, our tolerance was 1 to 4 thousandths. So let me see if I can get you in here to look at one of these. You can kind of see in the light there where that one is. So you just line these up and see which one matches it closest. That one, okay, that's 3 thousandths, 2 thousandths, so it's somewhere right in between. That's fine. This one, the thrust bearing, seems to be a little looser. So it's a little over 3. I'm not sure. It's really close. But like I say, we can go to 4, a little over 4. So that's all right. Let's look down here at this one. Sorry about all the wiggling around here. Okay, so there's 3. So probably a little strong, but not quite 2. So somewhere in there. So we're right in spec so far. Now let's look at this front one where the oil pump goes on. And once again, we're a solid 2 there. Nowhere near a 1.5, so more to a 2. Yeah, so I'm feeling really good about that. I think that we're just fine. We got to go through this whole process again on every rod bearing as well when we put those in. So we'll slide the piston and rod assembly up in, with the bearing on it, and then we'll push it up against that journal. We'll put the cap on, we'll torque it down with the plastic gauge, pull it back off, check it again, and see what it looks like. So yeah, so overall, I'm pretty pleased with things so far. Things are looking pretty good. Like I say, the big mistake I made, not really a mistake, just kind of got the cart ahead of the horse, was putting that cam, spending that time on that cam, because this is the gear that really makes the difference. So that that crank gear has got to be, I got to press that on there. And that is where that's where I have to check the clearance between this and the oil pump drive gear that sits down on here like this, and use some shims underneath this oil pump in order to get the proper clearance between those two gears. So hopefully it will go together just like the old one came apart. I don't know, we'll see. And then make sure everything meshes, make sure I don't have any issue here with the cam gear, and go from there. So that's what next step will be, the final assembly, I think, of laying the crankshaft in, and getting making sure that clearance is good. And yeah, and then from there, I'm not sure where I'll go from there. Probably on to pistons and rods and start developing a short block here. Okay, well, that's all I have for now, for this portion of it anyway. All right, everybody, that kind of does it for this video today. I got to wrap it up, and got some other things I got to take care of. Going to go fishing tomorrow, so if I get a salmon, maybe I'll slip a picture in here. And days are winding down for salmon fishing for the year, so I got to take advantage of them when I can. So I'm going to go tomorrow and see if I can get a nice couple coho salmon for the freezer. And yeah, so next video will be to finish up the main bearing portion, or the crankshaft portion, laying it in the block, getting that all done. And then we'll be moving on to rods and pistons and timing components and getting that all straight. So thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. If you're so inclined, hit subscribe and hit the like button, hit the little bell to let you know when I post more videos. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks very much.